This is a closer view of the picture that's been the backdrop to Adullam's cave music posts. As you can see, here's the temple in Jerusalem and all the people streaming up to one of the three great Moedim. The word means appointed times when God had called his people to gather together to worship three times a year: Pentecost, Passover, and the Feast of Tabernacles. And this picture to me captures the image of people who've been traveling perhaps for many days from all over the land of Israel. You see children here in the cart being carried along by oxen, bringing their sheep for their offerings. And of course, these would have been the very best of their flock that have been chosen for sacrifice. Groups here outside the walls, sharing in a meal together. And there's a wonderful sense, I think, here of what the Moedim represented. There was, of course, community, the joy of gathering together with people from their own tribe and other tribes, sense of unity, and, of course, gathering together at this wonderful site of Solomon's temple. And, of course, when they came together, there would be a strong emphasis on the reading of the Torah, reminding Israel of her history. And there would have been singing, dancing, feasting together on the sacrifices that they brought, and a focus, of course, on the worship of God and the sacrificial offerings for forgiveness, redemption, and also whole burnt offerings. And in the teaching of the Torah, there would be special emphasis on the theme for that particular feast, whether Passover or Pentecost or the Feast of Tabernacles. And central to those celebrations would be the singing of the Psalms. There would be huge choirs, lots of instruments, and the Psalms would be sung so that the younger generation as well as the older generation would learn the tunes. The words of the Psalms would be embedded in their minds, because of course they didn't have copies of the Psalms to read. And that's how they would learn so much of their theology, so much of their how to live the life that would be pleasing to God when they went back to their various situations. These feasts would last for days. They would be lasting days in terms of the journey to get there, and days on the journey back. But central to all these things would be the music. This was the only music they really had. Music for the Psalms, embedding the truths that God had revealed in the Psalms in their hearts and minds. And of course, as they would do this festival after festival 3 times a year, this is a wonderful way of teaching and learning. So even the young people would grow up year after year after year, more and more into the truths that God had revealed to them. I've specialized in the whole area of teaching and learning and how the brain learns for over 30 years now. And all that has been discovered and is being promoted in terms of modern learning and what we call brain-based learning, learning with how the brain is wired to learn. It was so exciting for me to see how all of this was already embedded in the way that God taught Israel in the Old Testament through the Moedim. And I believe that although we don't celebrate the Moedim today because we don't worship in an earthly temple, we worship in the heavenly temple, and what was a shadow has become the reality. Yet the educational value of the festivals at different times of the year remains. I was raised in evangelical circles where there's a great emphasis on biblical content, which of course is quite right. But what we've lost is what I consider to be the biblical methodology, because we were meant to learn in the context of celebration, of a community, as you'll see here, with the Word as central, but a central place for music and the Psalms and also the hymns. And so I believe that festivals like Advent, although not biblically mandated, have their place for teaching and learning. And the Christmas season should be much more than simply a carol service here or there. Easter should be much more than just an Easter weekend or a Good Friday service. It should be a period of time in which, through the teaching of the Word and the Psalms and hymns, the truths of that season are embedded in our hearts and in the hearts of the next generation. This is truly a powerful way in which our brains learn, but it's also a way in which Christ, our teacher, has designed us to learn. I suppose the Festival of Nine Lessons and Carols, or perhaps a performance of the Messiah, is a good example of how the richness of the scriptures along with hymns can be brought together to create a really memorable occasion. But those tend to be one-offs instead of a period of weeks or days when our minds are being lifted to these wonderful truths. So we go back to our places of work in the coming weeks or the following weeks with these things still going through our minds and thoughts.